Hello, Giants fans. Welcome to Giants Baseball 101. I'm Gabe Vaughn, your host. It's been about a week since the Giants were swept by the Phillies, but now they've started to come back to life, taking a series against the Rockies, 2 out of 3, and then doing the same thing here over the weekend against the Reds. And, they still have a losing record. I believe it's somewhere along the lines of 19 to 23. And they have about 4 games they still have to make up. But I think what's good to see is that they didn't stay in their slump. They came out and came back to life. And today against the Reds is really a perfect example of just getting the job done and sequencing hits and getting them at the right times, getting on base and then not leaving the runners on base. It included a 2-run shot from Lamont Wade Jr. And Kyle Harrison pitched 5 innings, allowing 3 runs, and fairly mediocre performance. It wasn't. It could have been better. It could have been worse as well. But the Giants bullpen unsuccessfully tried to take the lead all the way. And Ryan Walker gave up the game-tying home run, and then Camilo Doval took over, and he went 1 1/3 inning, so multi-inning outing for him. I think that just the way of using your closer in more than 1 inning during a game is just I think it can be such a valuable tool, and the Giants have I think just recently what we've seen is that they've shown a willingness to use Doval that way when it's necessary, and it was today. So the game went into extra innings, and the Giants just took care of business. Luke Jackson pitched a scoreless top of the 10th. Then at the bottom of the 10th, Casey Schmitt doubled in the winning run to walk it off and send the Giants home with a 6-5 victory. And it's really impressive how they've turned around their extra inning thing, whatever it was. It just was making them crumble in extra innings, but now they just go to it a different way, and they've turned it around, and now they're actually able to compete in extra innings, actually able to get stuff done. And I just think a lot of this from an offensive standpoint is being able to get hits at the right time, and from a pitching standpoint, it's being able to get out of situations with runners on base, which it's almost like for a second, just forget ERA here. Like, I certainly wouldn't talk this way all the time, but for a second, you just got to forget ERA while thinking about this, because it's really often about just a pitcher's ability to pitch through situations with runners on base, and that's what Luke Jackson did in the 10th inning, and ultimately what set things up for Casey Schmitt to walk it off in the bottom. So it's been a good series for the Giants, and they just have to carry the same momentum into their next task. And I just think from an overall decision-making perspective on their roster, it's very important that they realize something right now, and I hope that they are realizing it, because this year, and to some degree it's the case every year, but I just think in particular this year, we have to realize when does the trade deadline activity start gaining momentum. We can't possibly fall into the trap of thinking that it's this thing where everything happens in late July, that in the second half of July, that is where that's where the whole process begins, and then there's a big bunch of moves at the deadline on the 31st, which I believe it's the 31st this year, although I'm not positive. But that's a misconception that we need to correct right now. When does the activity begin? It's the momentum is it's getting started right now. Yeah, it's the first half of May. I understand that. And I know that all of us it's to varying degrees that we keep up on the news and on updates and everything. But things are starting to get warm as far as a trade deadline focus right now. The question is, how involved are the Giants in this? Regardless of whether you're talking about just seriously considering improving their roster further, or potentially negotiating with teams, or at least looking at what certain offers might be, or whatever it is, it starts now. It doesn't start July 1st. It doesn't start July 15th. It starts right now, and it's going on right now. What the process for what we're going to see at the end of July is going on right now. And hopefully the Giants are involved. That should make all the difference as to whether Farhan Zaidi should have been fired or not. It can just make all the difference on whether this front office can even respect itself anymore. And that doesn't mean just saying we're going to be aggressive, because what has experience taught us about that? Well, it's essentially taught us that we can't even figure out what that means anymore. So something's got to change. Obviously, that's not what we mean when we say get involved. The Giants right now need to be seriously planning what they're going to do, and they need to make sure right now that they're in contention for the top trade guys, because if they're not working on this right now, what's going to happen come trade deadline? Well, it's to me, and I can't read people's minds, and I can't see everything behind the scenes, but I believe that what would happen is just what has always happened, that they're able to somehow look like okay, we tried, but what does trying even mean for them? And all the good players just slip over their heads. And it's a similar story with free agency, but I think we're not on that subject right now. But the top trade candidates, I mean, I feel like the way they slip past the Giants, and I mean they've done so in the past, is just, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I think it's really beyond the scope of this video to explain in full, but I think the Giants just have been foolish to try to pretend like they tried to do stuff in the past. Right now is the time to get into this, because other teams are. There are other teams that are into this, and it's already... There's already so much talk about the trade deadline that the fire is hot right now. Now I'm just, I know it seems like I should give a whole long list of guys the Giants could be targeting after having said all that, but for the sake of time, I'm really just going to give like one idea of just I think a standout that they have to get, and that's the A's relief pitcher Mason Miller, who is just breaking out, and he's just great. Like I think he just blows hitters' minds. Essentially, he's just really good and almost unhittable. And the A's, excuse me, the A's, remember, they don't have a backbone. So what do we know is going to happen to him at the trade deadline? The A's, they're just going to be what they are. They can't compete anymore. They can't keep fans in their ballpark, and they're going to have to try to move to get, I guess, some temporary effect to drive up revenue, and that they can just hope it's going to last a while. But like that's all they're thinking of. They're just not going to be able to compete. So he's going, and I can promise that other teams they're thinking about him right now. I even think there are probably negotiations going on that will just remain behind the scenes, and they might actually never be reported. And it's not that you would ever have all your sights set on one guy. I think the Giants need to keep a broad focus, but I mean, I'm just saying they had sure better be thinking top of the market, because that's all that's going to win for them. You can't build a roster out of mediocre players, and we certainly, this shouldn't even have to be said, but we certainly can't see the joke of a trade deadline that the Giants had last time. So I just, nobody should be thinking I'm weird because I talk about the trade deadline in May. It's the time to talk about it, and I just hope that the Giants front office is that all of them are realizing it, and that Farhan Zaidi is understanding what it's going to mean to be aggressive for them, and you know, it's never, if they fall into the trap of thinking they have enough and they can't part with any prospects, even guys they consider to be some of their top prospects, that's the trap that keeps them out of the playoffs. And it has to be different this year, and that honestly is all I've got to say about it. Thank you for watching. This has been Giants Baseball 101. Please subscribe if you haven't. Also, please leave your questions and comments. You know where to do it. I'll see you next time on Giants Baseball 101.